Okay, we're ready to drive forward. Okay.
Robert,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of background noise.
Okay, and I'm going to have to go on mute. Okay, I'll do
I'm gonna
that.
mute-
You're
I'm
right.
gonna
There's a
mute-
lot of.
I'm going to mute everyone.
All
That's it.
right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I'll be on mute.
So we are in the bottom of page 5, paragraph starting, we have likewise been enjoined. I'm going to share the screen in a moment.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question. Were you asking last week's class about what prayer we thought was the most important prayer? Was that this class?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I have a prayer. I mean, I was going to say it last week, but I didn't. I think it's only one sentence. It's the very first sentence of Bedtime Shema. That starts with Ribbono Shel Olam.
Mhm.
That one sentence, I think, is the most important prayer. Because if Hillel told this guy who wanted to learn the whole Torah on 1 foot, the whole essence of Torah, and he said the whole essence is loving your fellow Jew, or don't do to others what, to Ahavas Yisrael. So this one sentence is asking, well, you can read it. I guess you have a siddur there. I don't want to take up the time, but I think that one prayer is maybe the most important.
Which is the prayer. The prayer is a prayer that before we go to bed, we forgive everyone for anything that they may have done against us on any level. So it's a prayer of forgiving anybody for what they've done to us. And like all of these prayers, I find they're easy to say. The difficult part, of course, is to keep in mind and to really think about what they mean, with all prayers. So I was just sharing in the class that there's a friend of mine who said that this was his favorite prayer to accept upon. Last week we were talking about the in the mimer about accepting upon ourselves the mitzvah of ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and a friend of mine said that's his favorite part of the prayer, which I found to be very moving, very beautiful. And last week, of course, we discussed that at great length, talking about how before we come before Hashem, before we come before God in prayer, we need to be complete, because basically we are offering ourselves to God as an offering, and therefore we cannot have a blemish. And if we are rejecting or resenting or harboring any negative feeling towards another Jew, we are rejecting that part of our very own self. So we are incomplete. So yes, what Reb David just said would be useful, because I'm forgiving them. But here on, but there's another component, and that is that where we are lacking, another one compensates for, right? So how can I be complete? We all, each and every one of us knows that we are imperfect, but where we are lacking, another Jew compensates. But we can only latch on to that compensation when we embrace every Jewish person, when we are loving every Jewish person. Then we can take their advantages and use them for ourselves. That's how we ourselves become complete. So that's another idea of this mitzvah, right? Of not the mitzvah, but particularly reciting this line, Hareini Mikabel Alai. So we may as well recite it right now together in case someone hasn't yet prayed or someone maybe hasn't started to practice this. Let's accept upon ourselves this mitzvah. I'm going to say it in the, I guess in the Hebrew. I just thought of this now. Otherwise, I guess you know what? Let me find a place that's.
Rabbi, when you're done, if you can, I was hoping maybe you would translate. Some people don't have the wording of the prayer that I was talking about. Ribbono Shel Olam.
Ribbono Shel Olam.
Yeah, because it's a very, very powerful concept. It's only one sentence.
Yes, indeed.
Rabbi.
Yes. Please.
Yes, Rabbi. Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Do you love the Jews? I mean, please don't take this wrong when I'm trying to ask you, but do you love the Jews of the Izvexia? I guess that's how it's pronounced.
Sexia.
Yes, right. Could you say, or the capos who maybe turn the Jews in to concentration camps?
We discussed this already.
But what was the answer? I'm still trying to
Here's the thing. Loving all of the Jews who already is not hard work, is it? There are the Jews that we love to love, right? I mean, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Lord Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Manis Friedman, right? You have these Jewish people, or these people who do remarkable things for the Jewish people. You think the Torah is coming and telling us you shall love your fellow as yourself? All of these lovable Jews. So loving some Jews is going to take work. And honestly, loving the Jewish people I'm going to mute all because there's some background coming. So if you want to continue the discussion, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Loving some Jews, even the ones that we love, sometimes we don't like. Even the ones that are closest to us, sometimes it's hard to love. Sometimes people in our own community. So it's work, it's hard work. And now to address your question, just very briefly, because we have spoken about it at length before. I have a friend. He's actually a Chabad rabbi in North Miami Beach, Rabbi Marlowe. You may know him. So after learning this discourse, he would say to me jokingly, he would say to me, Yisrael, I hate your guts, but your neshama I love. So our guts we each have our negative part. And part of the mystical experience of fulfilling this mitzvah is that we bring out the best part of another Jew by how we perceive them. Look at the way the Rebbe embraced every Jew that came before him, even a Jew coming with a New Testament before him. The Rebbe was very sharp and very severe regarding, that this is nonsense and you have to throw this away, but he loved the Jew. So loving a Jew doesn't mean that we love their life choices, as horrendous as they may be. Am I speaking to Moshe or everybody? But is Moshe, are you the one asking the question? I'm not sure.
Yes, I addressed the question. Yes, I addressed the question, yes.
So we need to realize that what this person is deep down inside is a neshama, is a soul that has gone horribly astray. And there's a lot more to talk about it, and it'll come up a little bit more as we're discussing in today's class about how to look at another human being. But we can reframe who that person is in our own mind. So if somebody comes to me and starts yelling at me and starts insulting me because I'm a openly Hasidic Jewish person, there's different ways to respond. One way to respond is to become defensive and to start attacking that person back, and to take the whole encounter on a very superficial level, in which case he's going to become more entrenched and I'm going to become more entrenched, and that's going to increase more hatred in the world. Or I can realize that this is a person who is suffering. When people are suffering, very frequently, they like to make other people suffer as well. And when you realize that the person is coming to you really not with insult, he's coming to you with his own personal suffering. And we respond not in kind, but we respond kindly, right? That's the important thing. Then we can change our perspective of that person, and we even have the capacity to change that person. I've done this on countless occasions. as you know, thousands of Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins and good Jewish people have done around the world on many occasions. So you can either defend yourself, or you can realize that there's something much deeper underneath this Jew. So I'm not saying I love them just unconditionally, no matter what they do, I love them. No, I have to work on loving them. It is hard work. I need to remind myself. I need to remind myself that there is a Jew buried underneath here. And if I don't bring out that Jew, who is? Who's going to?
Rabbi, how do we, for the purposes of this mimer, how do we really concisely define love?
That's going to come up in tonight's class and today's class. And what the Rebbe is going to explain is not so much necessarily how we love them, so much as how can we not despise them, or how can we not hate them. And when you can learn to not hate them, then I think automatically you can come to appreciate them. And that's going to be, hopefully we'll get to it. That's going to be the topic of today.
That's a challenge when an individual has caused you a lot of emotional pain or trauma, to apply it to somebody in that situation. It's very hard to do.
Of course, but level number one is realizing that this person is coming from a place of trauma. This person is coming from a place of trauma. Once you realize that a person is coming from a place of trauma, how are you going to deal with them? The same old way? Or a whole different way? With rachmanis, with having compassion on their soul, having compassion on them. Here's a Jew who Nebuch, unfortunately, very possibly through no fault of his own, never came to appreciate and understand the importance of what Judaism is about. We spoke about this at great length. You know what? And last week's class, the week before, it's online. You can go and listen to it again. And it's something that we all have to work on every single day. This is not the kind of thing that, I learned it, now I can apply it. No, personally, I'm teaching it. I still have to apply it every single day. And through this, we can bring a much greater level of contentment to our own heart, and we can also touch the soul of another. And I'm telling you, this is the secret of, people ask, it's Chabad Shluchim, what? How are they able to do what they do? Because they follow in the footsteps of the Rebbe, of how to look at another person who is insulting you, who disagrees with you, who is giving you a hard time. You love them.
Rabbi?
And I don't want to talk about people from the past. We have plenty of horrendous people in the present. So we don't need to talk about what about this Jew and what about that Jew. What about Jews in our own life?
Rabbi?
Yes.
Could I ask a question? Okay.
Sure.
I've known even in the past, in my own lifetime, where people, who have intermarried, the relatives will say, well, I'm saying Kaddish, I'm tearing my garment, and that's it. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. They're no longer part of the family. I mean, it's not mine, but I'm just saying I've heard people in the past and in the kahal that I've lived in where they've actually said things like this.
Right. Were you here last week, Moshe?
Yes, I was here. I didn't get the exact response to what you were saying with regards to that.
I think this came up as well. And just very briefly, this is no longer the SJP. This is no longer standard Jewish practice.
Can I ask you another question?
For our communities where they will, but even in the Orthodox community, this is not what we do today.
Oh, okay, then if that's the case, then that means that a lot of other halachot should also be under those conditions too.
It wasn't a halacha, Moshe. It wasn't a halacha. You have to make a difference. You have to understand when we're talking about the practice of what Jewish people did can change.
Okay. But these new guidelines.
Well, just one second.
These new guidelines,
Just one
I'm
second.
sorry.
When you're talking about a halacha, that we're not changing a halacha, okay? Because it wasn't a halacha that you must do this. It was a
Okay,
practice.
but okay, new guidelines, excuse me, guidelines. These new
Yes.
guidelines should extend into other areas of Judaism, not just only this. I mean, in others, the whole gamut should be changed according to the new rules of Judaism, as opposed to the time of the Tanaim and going back to the time where women were put to death for anything that they did or whatever, or anybody who commits murder or any kind of act. It should actually extend beyond that for all Yehudim. Am I correct?
Well, we are you correct?
Where do you cross the line? In other words, where do you cross the line?
Where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line? That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I'm not going to continue with this because it's not really apropos to this discourse. I'm going to give you a very simple answer to this, okay? Halacha, there's Jewish law. There's a question of Jewish law. Many of the things that you mentioned above are laws of the Torah, and it's halacha that come out in a certain way. And we'll see when Mashiach comes and there'll be a new Sanhedrin, because right now, presently, to my knowledge, we're not putting people to death. I haven't, rabbis sometimes in their speeches bore people to death, but that's just an expression. We don't put people to death today. There'll be a Sanhedrin. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a Sanhedrin. And you'll bring it up with them. You'll see how they adjudicate and how they figure out all of these laws for today. There are, in the Torah, we have laws of all of the sacrifices. A lot of people say we should do away with those. Well, those are laws in the Torah. The Torah says do this, and so we do that. The Torah does not say that if somebody who is an estranged Jew intermarries, then you sit shiva for them. Okay, that's not a halacha. And like I said above, there are practices and there's Jewish law, and practices can change. Halacha is by and large not going to change.
So what you're saying is that things will be more followed by the Rabbanan instead of the Raisa. You're saying it will be before Mashiach comes. It's not going to be strictly by Machmir, according to a Machmir guidelines. It will change.
We might see. You know what? When the new Sanhedrin arises, the new Sanhedrin might decide that all of these stringencies that the Jewish people have taken on are excessive, and they will reduce it. Would you like to know another possibility? Maybe this Sanhedrin will see in their eyes that these stringencies are so great. Let's add a few more. I don't know.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, according to the kind of conditions that people are living in today, it's
Moshe,
acceptable. Because that's the same situation.
Go ahead. What? I'm sorry.
I say what I'm asking you is that according to the new conditions that we're living in under today, it does not have the same impact as it did in the past. You're saying it's a different situation today.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to satisfactorily address your question. Okay. What I can say, based on what the Rambam says, okay? This is the Rambam in Halacha, brought in his Sefer Yad HaChalakha, and he talks very clearly about how to deal with Jewish people who are already generationally removed from Judaism. And he says they have to be drawn close, and you cannot use the standards of what the Torah was talking about, people who were committed to Judaism and then defected, shall we say, okay? But people who were born into families who already went apart. The Rambam talks about this in his code and says these are in the category of children that were taken captive when they were children. They must be drawn close with all measures that are possible. And he talks about it at much greater length in his letters and his correspondence. And this has been the path of the vast majority of the poskim, of the rulers of Jewish law. Now, and that applies today. Why, and a lot of people, there are many.
Why do we all have to sit here and listen to it for half an hour?
Okay.
It's not fair.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize, Benzian. I'm going to go forward. Okay. Now moving on. So I'm just going to start off in the bottom of page 5. We have likewise been enjoined with a positive precept to offer every sacrifice unblemished, as it's written, to be accepted, it shall be perfect. Okay, so this is going back to what we spoke about last week, that we ourselves become the offering to Hashem, and we have to be perfect. Even though the rationale for this mitzvah has been thoroughly explained above, there's yet another wonderful explanation, clarifying the awesome good brought about by a person for himself and for the entire world through observing this positive mitzvah. It also brings to light the opposite, God forbid, of what arises when one neglects this mitzvah and transgresses the scriptural prohibition of do not hate, right? Lo tisnat achicha b'levavecha, do not hate your brother in your heart. And the explanation is based on an exposition of the above-mentioned statement of Hillel. What did Hillel say? Remember the story with Hillel of the person who wanted to convert and came before him, teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot. And this is what Hillel said. What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That's what he told him. What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. And this requires explanation. Why did Hillel paraphrase this mitzvah in the negative instead of using positive wording? Right? That which you like, do unto others, right? I think that they call that the golden rule. What you like, do unto others. In particular, the question applies since the verse is simple meaning and the translation of Onkelos uses positive terminology. So it's not just a question, why did, sometimes you have a question and it's like if you said it in positive, you say, why does it say in the positive? He should have used the negative. No, the pasuk says it in the positive, right? Love your fellow. And Onkelos, who translates the Torah, says, that you shall love your fellow as yourself. Also in the Aramaic, in the positive terminology. So it's not just a question of why, but why he's actually changing what the Torah says. It's not changing what the Torah says. He's putting it in his own words, but the words he's using are in the negative, and there's got to be something deep and meaningful about this. And that's what the next leg of the mimer is going to be speaking about. We must conclude that, as will be explained, Hillel's rendition interprets the mitzvah of love your fellow as yourself on a deeper level. Our sages teaching that a person sees no flaws within himself. Okay, so this is now going to be based on a statement of our sages. Where is that? That's going to be, I want to see where that's quoted from, 25. Shabbat, it says in Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat, page 119a, that a person sees no flaws within himself. Now, at first glance, you probably don't agree with that. Let's see what this means. It doesn't mean that a person is unaware of his shortcomings. For someone also perceives only what is visible to the eye, while he discerns what is in the depths of his own heart. Meaning, a person knows his own flaws better than anybody else. I'm sure everybody sitting here is aware of their own flaws. Okay? And if you're not aware, ask your spouse. Okay? But seriously, we all know our own flaws better than anybody else. So what does the Talmud mean by saying that you don't see your own flaws? Instead, the intent of the Talmudic adage is the following, and this, very important, pay close attention, is that his fault is not important to him and does not disturb him. It is as if he does not see it at all. It's as if, that's an important word here. It's as if he doesn't see it at all because of his great self-love, that love covers all his shortcomings, although he's conscious of them. shielding them in an encompassing manner. The person's self-love envelops him to the extent that he cannot appreciate his situation objectively. Okay, so I want to explain this. The Rebbe will go on and talk about this, but I want to go into this. So we should have a clear understanding of what the Rebbe is saying. What the Rebbe is saying here is that we're aware of our own flaws, but they don't upset us to the point of despising ourselves. Okay? We might have some levels of dislike of our activity, but we don't essentially hate ourselves. We may say, oh, I hate myself, but we don't really hate ourselves. I want to give you a very clear analogy for this. And it might not even be an analogy. It might be something that's happened in your very own household. You can't find your keys. I want to go on to the gallery view here and see how many people here ever had a problem that they couldn't find their keys. Anybody? Just a few. Everybody here. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone. Now, when you can't find your keys, maybe you've gotten beyond this step, but certainly when you were a younger person, what's the first thing who do you start to blame? Other people. Right? I can't believe my wife she borrowed them, she didn't put them back. I can't believe the cleaning lady, my kid, we start blaming everybody and we actually start getting upset at them, right? We all have had this experience in our life. You start getting upset at people who they didn't do anything, but just in your imagination they did something. Then finally you find your keys. Where do you find now all of the people who took your keys, the wife, the cleaning person, your kids, whoever, right? They were all horrible for being so inconsiderate, right? And not putting the key back. This is right. I can't believe they didn't put it back. And here I am, right? And there you had judgment for all of these people. All of a sudden you find your key in the coat that you had worn 2 days ago. Where you put it in your coat pocket and you pull it out. So who was at fault? Yourself. Just 1 second, Reb David. You yourself were at fault. Now, do you take all that judgment and turn it to yourself and say, I am so inconsiderate. How could I not have put my key? No, you don't. You cut yourself full and absolute slack, and you're not bothered at all. It was me. Once you realize that you're the one at fault, it doesn't bother you one iota. All right, maybe you think I should really remember to put it back where it goes. But you had all of this judgment for all of these people who in your imagination had done this terrible thing to you. But then when you find out you're the one who did it, right? This is a very simple phenomena that Chassidus is explaining here. It's called self-love. And even though we may not always have full self-love and adequate self-love, but we have enough self-love that we cut ourselves tremendous slack for our own faults.
Rabbi.
Just 1 second, please. Just 1 second, please. Okay. I think Reb David wants to speak. A few others, so we'll go around. Everyone will talk. Right. Another thing. Sometimes you hear somebody talking in shul, and someone's talking in shul, and you start getting all upset at them, in your head or out loud, right? Or someone's talking, right? But when you talk in shul, it doesn't bother you, right? It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing when other people are doing it, it bothers me so much. But when I do it, I can't explain it. It doesn't bother me at all. Right? In fact, I quite enjoy it, right? That's normal because we cover over with our own self-love. And that is what the Talmudic dictum means. We'll get to the questions in a moment. That is the Talmudic dictum that a person doesn't see his own flaws. He sees the flaw, but it doesn't bother him. It's not apparent before his eyes. And that is the reality of humanity. And we're going to see soon how we can extend this to others after we get some questions and comments. I think Reb David was first.
Some people get angry at inanimate objects.
Yes, indeed. Ben Zion.
Yeah, I wanted to say the first place or the first thing I would blame is after I was thinking, where was I or where did I see those keys last?
Right,
And if I cannot remember that, then I'll start
Right.
blaming somebody.
right. First we think, where did I put it last? First, we put a
Yeah.
little effort into seeing
Right.
where did I put it last. But after we can't find it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rabbi,
Yes, Phyllis or Yehudis.
no, it's police. I cannot say that I do not despise myself, because if I do things, or if I have done things in the past, which I perceive in retrospect have been harmful to me in a stupid way, or in a way that I feel that, maybe I smugly thought, or I misguidedly thought were right at the time, or it seemed like a good idea at the time, or I just was distracted, and I could just hit myself, because I really am so frustrated that I've caused myself a lot of trouble, and I blame myself.
Right. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm having trouble dealing with this.
I'm sorry to hear that. I understand what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. And here's what you become. You become very frustrated with yourself and very upset with yourself, but you don't have righteous indignation against yourself. And you don't have the same kind of judgment that you would have for other people. I mean, all of us have for other people. So yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, this is true. We can be so frustrated with myself and so upset at myself, and I can't believe I did that again. And that's horrible, horrible. But we still excuse ourselves, and we still do not carry around the judgment against ourselves. So I hear what you're saying. It's true. But we still, at the very same time, so the experience with the keys, you never had that? Of finding your keys
That's
and
minor
realizing,
by comparison to the mistakes I've made.
right, I understand, but still we will normally, right, and by the way, I think there's going to be a spectrum of people, and some people hold themselves more accountable. Some people hold themselves accountable in the perfect way, where they then are able to fix themselves. Some people don't hold themselves accountable very much, and some people hold themselves accountable and find themselves unable to change. I don't want to get into this whole area, but it's certainly every human being is going to be different on this spectrum. But this is, generally speaking, we don't see our own flaws so as to be judgmental against ourselves. Benzian.
I still pray to Hashem to have mercy on me and to allow me to go on. I still have mercy. I beg Hashem to have mercy.
Right.
And I have difficulty dealing with a professional mistake, or a deliberate, as I indicated last week, a deliberate, I don't want to use the term oversight, but a deliberate blow off or slough off that someone made to me. Sure. I mean, I would judge someone else's harshly, but I judge myself harshly for not carrying through when I should have, or
yes,
I could have saved myself a lot of misery.
Indeed. Benzian, please.
Yeah, I wanted to say, as to your question before, why is it in the negative instead of the positive? Mm-hmm. I think things that you like are not necessarily going to be liked by your fellow man or by your friend, but things that you hate, don't do to him, because you don't know if he's going to hate it too, or he's going to like it, So hateful things don't do to anybody.
Okay, that's interesting. So that way you have a more direct way of covering your base.
Right.
right?
it's more likely that you'll be right.
I might love when somebody hugs me, comes, sees me, and hugs me and gives me a kiss, but other people might not like that.
Right.
So you're doing it to someone else, and they don't like that. I hear what you're saying. That's good. What the Rebbe is going to come and say, and I think I'm going to tell you ahead of time because it'll be clearer as we unpack it here in the Mimer. What the Rebbe is talking really about specifically one thing that none of us like. You ready for that one thing that none of us like?
Yeah.
So you know that flaw that you have, that your psyche takes great care to cover up and make sure that it's not open and revealed to everybody, and you make sure to cover it up so that nobody sees it, nobody's aware, and you know about it, but you don't want to talk about it, and you don't want anybody else. Right? So what you don't like is when somebody reveals that flaw to others. You don't like when somebody exposes the truth about you, the truth that you yourself know, but it's nobody's business. So the same way that you don't like that flaw, your flaws exposed, don't expose other people's flaws. Don't even see it. Don't even see their flaws. Just like you cover over your own flaws and you ignore it, right? I want you to do the same. What I do for my flaws, I want you to do to my flaws as well. And your flaws, I'm going to cover over. So as well with love. And this is another interesting psychological approach to the mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself.
It's like our rabbi, when he sees somebody driving on Shabbat coming to shul, he turns around and walks away.
He doesn't
Not
see
to
it,
see
right?
it.
Exactly. Not to see it. I don't see it. I don't want to see it. I don't.
Right.
It's not precisely so. I want to hear about. I had a guy in shul, a frum guy in shul, telling me, do you see that guy? His checkbook is sticking out of his back pocket. I told him, I've never noticed it. I don't look, I don't see, I don't, you don't want to see it.
Yeah.
You don't want to see it. And here's another analogy for this. I'm going to jump back into the Mimer. The Rebbe hasn't finished unpacking it, but I think when we understand what direction he's going in, we'll have an easier time with the words inside. Sometimes with our children, people will talk about our children, and parents, they see the flaws of their children. They see it, but they don't see it. You see, we're talking about you don't see your own flaws, as the flaws are there, but they're under the cover, right? They're under the cover. They are, what do they call it today?
Invisible.
We make them invisible. That's good. We make them invisible. We cover them with an invisibility cloak. Exactly. And this is, the Rebbe will bring the verse. Al kol pisha'im tichaseh ahava. On all iniquities, love covers over. And this is how we want God, of course, to look at us, to cover over, to have such a great love for us, that he doesn't see our flaws because he loves us so much. When you love your spouse, when you love your children, when you love another person, someone starts insulting you and telling you something, you don't want to hear it, right? No, it's not. You got it wrong. That's not true. It's not like that. It's true. It's none of our business. Do not uncover. So let's go back into the beautiful words of the Tzemach Tzedek here. Instead, so we're explaining this line from the Talmud, that a person does not see his own flaw. He doesn't see the flaws within his own self. Instead, the intent of the Talmudic adage is that his fault is not important to him and does not disturb him. Again, it might disturb you to some degree, Phyllis, and we can all appreciate that. But it is as if he does not see it at all because of his great love. And that love covers over all shortcomings, though he's conscious of them, shielding them in an encompassing manner. Though intellectually aware of his deficiencies, this knowledge will not evoke any emotional response. Accordingly, his shortcomings give him no cause to be concerned. He does not see any faults within himself because they are submerged and nullified by his intense self-love, which shields them in an encompassing manner. This is a Hasidic terminology, but the point is, it's like a blanket that just covers over everything. When, however, another person points out his faults and understands it, he becomes very angry, even though he himself is well aware that what the person is saying is true. Essentially, his anger is not aroused by the fault itself. That is, he does not feel that the other person is mistaken in his judgment and is suspecting him of a non-existent defect, for he knows that what the person is saying is true. Instead, it is the other person's perception of his defect that inflames his ego and causes him agitation. In contrast, when he himself knows of the fault, his self-love conceals it. He becomes enraged at his colleague for bringing it out into the open, for revealing his flaw from the concealed and unperceived state to which his self-love had relegated it. For now, after the other person calls attention to it, it has now become tangible and substantive, a tangible and substantive shortcoming. On this basis, we can appreciate Hillel's statement. What is hateful to you? What is that? One thing, that one thing that is hateful to you, having one of your shortcomings revealed. That's what we really hate. I hate when people do that. Do not do it to your fellow. Do not expose his faults and imperfections, whether in worldly matters, in his relationship with others, or in his spiritual behavior. Do not make them noticeable and concrete. Instead, let your love for him be so great that it covers his flaws and does not permit your intellectual awareness of them to evoke an emotional response.
Rabbi?
Just 1 second, please. This is loving the other person as yourself. As yourself. Treating him with the same type of blind love with which one treats himself. And as I mentioned above, we do apply this to other people that we love. And we cover them with the blanket. We're able to extend the blanket of self-love to others. When we love others, we also do not perceive their faults. Yes, please.
Yes, Rabbi. If someone else exposes these faults, it's a form of Lashon Hara. Isn't that true? He's publicizing something that really is private, even though it's a terrible fault.
Right.
Isn't that correct?
There are all different types of technicalities connected to Lashon Hara, to the evil tongue. Like if it's something that's known to people, or if it's now if the person is right there and you're telling him to his face. So it more has to do with ona'ah, which means saying insulting things to people, which is prohibited, and also the prohibition of hating another Jew and nullifying the mitzvah of not loving your fellow Jew. So yeah, it could hinge on that. If the fellow is not there, then for sure it's Lashon Hara, you're right. But what if the person is there and you're exposing it? But you're right, if you're exposing this not in front of the person, that would be Lashon Hara. But the point of the Rebbe here is that this is the point of what we should not do to others. Don't expose their secrets, just like you don't expose your own secrets, right? Right? You're at shul and there's a guy who always comes late, and you start saying, "I can't believe that you're late again. You're making everybody wait. This is so inconsiderate." Right? Are you going to go to shul and start talking about your own faults? You know, I can't believe that I have an estranged son. I haven't reached out to him at all, and it's so horrible. No one's going to go and start talking about their own faults. Extend the love. Extend the blanket of love. That's what the Rebbe is suggesting to us in this mind. When a person feels an exceedingly great yearning and desire for another because of a great and powerful attraction to him, issuing from the very essence of his soul, any wrong that the other may inflict upon him that conflicts with this love will not be important to him at all. In other words, when you love another person, right? Coming you up when you have the greater the bond of love is, the more you're not going to see. And the more you're going to make excuses. How many times have you heard Jewish mothers making excuses for the horrible actions of their kids? This is, this is a mark of love. Would anybody say to the mother, you know what, you really I have to see what the reality is? No, that's not the job of the mother. That's the job of the court system. That's the job of the mother, right? Is not to is to not see the faults of the child and to love him unconditionally. That's not a blanket statement. I'm not saying that applies in all situations. Okay, I'm just saying generally speaking. And so the Rebbe continues, it will be nullified in the great intensity of his love. As the verse states, many waters cannot extinguish the love. Therefore, Hillel declared, this is the entire Torah. Now we have another piece of the puzzle to explain here. Okay? The other piece of the puzzle, so far we have this piece, why he said it in the negative. Who here gets why he said it in the negative? That which you don't like, don't do to others. Did we understand that? Yes? No? Just want to make sure everyone, yeah? Good? Isaac, we haven't heard from you today, but
So, Rabbi,
yes.
This amounts to our suppressing what we really know. We don't want to admit ourselves, but we suppress our feelings and our honesty. It's a matter of suppressing we're trying to not hide, but suppress what we in fact know.
Same courtesy that we extend to ourselves. Right? The same courtesy that we extend to ourselves, we do that with others. And the truth to be told, Julian, I don't know that I would call this suppressing. In your own self, you're not suppressing it. It's just you're saying, here's a human being here that God loves and God created, and you're trying to muster the love for the person so that you simply don't see it. And seeing it doesn't mean that you're not aware of it. It means that you're not judging the person for it one iota. How glorious is it when you're able to see, for example, I mean, this is not glorious, this is obvious. Somebody comes to shul in a wheelchair, right? Rahman al-Islam, they can't walk. Are you going to start judging them and saying, this person can't walk, they're flawed, I can't believe it? Of course not, right? I mean, or it's a shame, or no, you're going to want to help the person, you're going to be particularly kind to the person. Nobody would think. Now, you know the fact of the matter that this person has a handicap. Well, this is it, my friend. This is it. We all have spiritual, emotional, psychological handicaps. Okay? And what we want is that even though people are aware of it, the same courtesy that I extend to myself, I extend to them. I don't suppress it. That's just my basic love for people, is that I don't see it. So I suppressing is going to be a lot more difficult.
Okay. Thank you.
Rabbi?
Yes, please.
If someone has acted in a way that is really professionally negligent and in fact criminally negligent in terms of the health of their patient, wouldn't it be wrong to withhold this information from people in the community who could otherwise also be harmed? I mean, I'm not in order to take spite, but just as a matter of preventing this as an ongoing mode of real bad negligence.
Look, you are allowed to, if someone is acting negligently in their profession, you can love them and also warn people to not use this service because they may be harmed. We're not going to discuss this any further. If you want to see a greater discussion, it's in lesson number 2. Go and find the recording. Okay. So this is, so now you know why it's said in the negative. Don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. We're talking about one thing. Suppose they, right? So the same way that our self-love blankets our inadequacies, we have to extend that love to see another human being. It's a matter of seeing a human being. I find this to be something that I try to apply almost every day in my life, to really another human being. This is so significant. This is so important because we get so caught up in small stuff. And this is an ability to really make ourselves more mature. No matter how old we are, we can all use a little bit more maturity. Now the Rebbe is going to address another mysterious statement, another enigmatic statement from the Tzemach Tzedek. So now I see this is beautiful. This is wonderful. This is amazing. Boy, if I could only apply this to my life, my whole life would be transformed. But how is this the entire Torah? How is this the whole Torah? If you'd want to say that it's the whole Torah regarding interpersonal relationships, okay, I got that. That's, maybe 25% of the Torah laws, maybe less. But how is this? Is this like the mitzvah of mezuzah? Is this the mitzvah of keeping kosher? Is this the mitzvah of building a holy temple? I mean, there are so many other mitzvot. So this is the next question that we have to answer. Remember, Hillel said, the question was, teach me the entire Torah while standing on one foot. And he said, that which you despise, don't do to others. That's what you don't like, don't do to others. Now we know what that means. Then he said, Zehu kol ha-Torah kula. This is the entire Torah. V'idich perushahu. The rest of the Torah is merely a commentary on this. Zil Gemor. Go and learn the commentary. But how is this the whole Torah, right? That question remains. And that's what the Rebbe is now going to address. We might be able to get the answer today. We might have to just start the answer and get back to it next week. But let's go further in the discourse. We're at therefore on the top of page 7, second line. Therefore, Hillel declared, this is the entire Torah. For the interrelation of the souls of Israel with each other, becoming truly one as if they are a single entity. This is what we were speaking about in the first and second class at great length. Evokes a most wondrous effect above, which is the essence and purpose of the entire Torah. Let's see what that is. Then we'll go back and unpack it. What is that? What is the purpose of the entire Torah? It is the unity of the Holy One, blessed be He, with His Shekhinah. God's Shekhinah is identified as Ima Tata'a, the lower matriarch, and Matronisa, the matron. Both of these terms are analogy. We're going to get back into some Kabbalah today a little bit. Both of these terms are analogies for the Sphira of Malchus, the source of the Jewish souls. You know what? We're not going to be able to really do this any justice today, so we're going to continue with this next week. However, just in short, I'm going to give you the short idea, and we'll go back to it next week. As in the bringing about of existence, the way that God brought about existence, he so to speak brought forth an element of himself that became separated from his essence. There is God to himself, as we refer to as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He who is the Holy One, blessed be He, holy meaning apart and removed. And the Shekhinah is an opposite force of God, which comes to rest and reside in the world. And really, at its source, it brings about, it allows for the creation of all of a seemingly separate existence. So there is a bifurcation, there is a split, a division created in God himself, so to speak, in the creation. Well, simply put, can God create an entity that rejects God's existence? Answer? Even though it's all part of God and all part of God's plan somehow or another, and all part of the oneness and all incorporating the oneness of God, can God create an entity that rejects the existence
Rabbi,
of God?
really, in the case in an earlier class that we had earlier about the Sidukim who refused to accept two worlds, they only accepted the one world, which was this world here, not the world to come.
Okay. Even more so. I mean, we don't have to go back to the Tzedukim. Do you know any human being that is an atheist? Of course you do. If you don't, you got to get out more, really. So can atheists exist in this world? Yes. Well, that's proof to this idea of the seeming division in God that we're talking about over here. All right. God created a domain where we are unaware of God. The job of the Torah is to reunite this domain with the higher domain, to reunite the lower reality with the higher reality. So we can say, Bayom Hahu, on that day, not today, but hopefully tomorrow, God will be one and his name will be one. Well, now his name is not one? No, because his name is the way that he's perceived in the world. And in the world perception, is everything totally united and unified within God? Not in the world perception. That's going to happen when Mashiach comes. The whole job of the Torah is to create from this division to create a unity. The most awesome way to accomplish this, the most all-encompassing way to accomplish this, as the Rebbe is going to explain, we'll get to next week, is through creating the unity of the Jewish souls. When you create this unity of the Jewish souls and you realize that this other person is actually me, then you're going to extend your love to him. So through not exposing his flaws, because I love him. Why do you love him? Because we're all one. You are bringing about this all-encompassing unity from the seeming division that exists presently. It's a very heady concept. We'll get to it at more length next week. Okay, questions and comments, other than the questions and comments that we've been speaking about until now.
No, thank you very much, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, examples were just terrific. You explained a very difficult concept in such a way that you could almost touch it. Thank you so much. It's beautiful.
More important than touching it, of course, is applying it, right? That's the challenge. So God should give each and every one of us the ability to fulfill this. Oh, I started off by saying we should all recite the Hareini before the class, because this is really such an important thing. So in case we didn't have a chance to recite it yet today, we can all say together, here it's written in the Hebrew and then the transliteration above, which is basically saying that I hereby accept upon myself the positive mitzvah of loving my fellows myself. So we can all say it in words, and hopefully the words that we say will be an extension of our heart and our action.
הריני מקבל עליי מצוות עשה של
Rabbi,
yes,
I have a question. So how come, according to this mimer, we should not be saying that? We should be saying that I hereby take upon myself not to do which is hateful to you, not to do to others.
But we are all smart
Instead
enough to know that this is what it means.
Yeah, but the mimer is emphasizing the negative statement of Hillel, and the Hareini Makabel is emphasizing the positive. I don't want to make trouble. I'm just throwing this out there.
Right. So the idea was explained so well in the mimer that now the question is, so why didn't the Torah say it in the negative? Right? Why did Torah say it in the negative. Okay.
Why don't we say it in our prayers? Hareini.
It's not really a question. We understand. Is your question on what the Torah said or on us pronouncing this?
No, on the Hareini being in the positive instead of the negative, like Hillel.
So why does the Torah state it in the positive?
Why does the prayer say Hareini? We should
The
take
prayer
upon
is a
ourselves.
copy of the Torah.
Yeah, but so is the other part that Hillel said. So why are we saying it in the positive?
What would you
as
suggest?
our-
What do you think would be a better way, so to speak? What would be?
Well, it would line up with what Hillel said. I hereby accept upon myself not to do which is hateful to others, that which is hateful to myself.
Right. Really, the way the Rebbe explained it here, it's really all one thing. It's about love, but the practicality of that love, right? Hillel is simply putting it forth in a way that we can understand it psychologically and practically in a very common way about how we look at other people and don't do to them. So what Hillel is saying is an extension or an expansion or a deeper mode of the original statement of the Torah. It's not something other than, it is exactly a deeper explanation of what the Torah says. We just simply go back to the source of what the Torah says. That's the mitzvah. We're accepting upon ourselves in the format of many, there are many, not in Chabad, but in other nusachaot, before a person does a mitzvah, they say, Hareini mikabel alai mitzvat, I accept upon myself the mitzvah of doing such and such, just to be aware that I'm doing this with kavanah, with intention, that I'm doing it with intentionality. So this is the format. So here's my question to you, Reb David. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, does that include what Hillel says?
Yeah.
There we have it.
Yes.
So no harm done.
It's an acknowledgement that we understood what he meant.
Right. Right. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I mean, there's also a concept of shuv meirah. So for the person that can't create the positive feelings, at the very least, shuv meirah. Don't do to somebody else what you know yourself you don't need. For a yid, we go further and say, generate a love, but for a non-Jew, it's already a start just to deal with what you have.
Could be. All right. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Next week, same channel. Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everybody.